Hit the like button, share your thoughts, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. The desert was quiet except for the hum of Marcus's hoverbike as he cruised over the dunes. He was halfway through a week-long retreat. Just him, his tools, and the vast, untouched landscape. The solitude was a welcome change from the noise of the megacities. Then he saw it. A faint plume of smoke on the horizon. Curiosity piqued. Marcus adjusted his goggles against the glare of the setting sun and veered toward the source. As he crested the next dune, his breath caught. A ship, sleek, metallic, and unmistakably alien, was half buried in the sand. He dismounted, his boots crunching against the coarse grains as he approached cautiously. The hull was dented and scorched, the aftermath of a violent crash. Strange symbols etched into the metal glowed faintly, their meaning beyond him. Suddenly, a voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Stay back, human." Marcus froze, hands raised. A group of figures emerged from the wreckage, all of them tall, lithe, and unmistakably not of Earth. Their skin shimmered with faint, iridescent hues, and their eyes glowed in colors he'd never seen before. They wore sleek uniforms, now tattered and singed, and carried what looked like energy weapons. "I'm not here to hurt you," Marcus said, keeping his tone calm. "I saw the smoke. Thought someone might need help." The leader, a woman with silver-blue skin and a commanding presence, narrowed her eyes. "And what could you possibly do to help us?" Marcus smirked, lowering his hands. "Fix things. That's what I do." He gestured to the tools strapped to his belt. The group exchanged skeptical glances, but the leader, clearly weighing her options, finally nodded. "I am Captain Thalva. If you're lying, human, you won't live to regret it." "Fair enough." Marcus approached the ship under their watchful eyes, scanning the damage. The ship's engine core was a mess, its power systems fried, and several crucial components were missing or damaged. He whistled low. "Impressive tech. Way beyond anything we've got. But the principles are the same." He knelt beside the engine, running his hands over the smooth metal. "You've got a hybrid plasma conversion system here, right? Looks like your energy stabilizer blew out. Got a backup?" Thalva frowned. "It's not functioning." "Then we'll make one." "Out of what?" Another alien scoffed. Marcus grinned, pulling a multipurpose tool from his belt. "Out of whatever you've got. Let's get to work." The aliens watched in stunned silence as Marcus set to work, stripping wires, rerouting circuits, and repurposing scrap metal. He explained each step in layman's terms, his voice steady and confident. "Why not just use a molecular reconstruct?" one alien asked, her tone edged with disbelief. Marcus chuckled. "If I had one of those, sure. But sometimes you've got to work with what you've got." Hours passed, the sun dipping below the horizon as Marcus worked tirelessly. The aliens, initially dismissive, gradually began to assist, their skepticism giving way to cautious respect. By the time he stepped back, his hands streaked with grease. The engine core hummed faintly. "It's not perfect," he said, wiping his brow. "But it'll hold long enough to get you off this rock." Thalva stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "You did this with primitive tools and no prior knowledge of our technology." Marcus shrugged. "Engineering's just problem-solving. Doesn't matter if it's Earth tech or alien tech." Thalva stared at him for a long moment before extending a hand. "Thank you, Marcus." As he clasped her hand, a small smile tugged at her lips. "Perhaps," she murmured, "there's more to humans than we thought." The alien ship's engine core was running, albeit on a delicate patchwork of Earth-grade materials and Marcus's improvised modifications. For now, it hummed like a sleeping beast, fragile but alive. Marcus leaned against a support beam inside the cargo bay, wiping his hands with a rag he'd tucked into his belt. Around him, the alien crew murmured in a language he couldn't understand, their voices a mix of awe and confusion. Captain Thalva, however, remained silent, her eyes fixed on the jury-rigged system. "How long do you think it'll hold?" Thalva finally asked, her tone neutral but her gaze sharp. Marcus shrugged. "If you don't push it too hard? Long enough to get somewhere safer. Maybe even back to your home system if you're lucky. He glanced around the interior of the ship, noting its sleek, alien design. But if you've got anything else broken, you'll want to tell me now. I don't do half-fixes. One of the younger aliens, a vibrant green-skinned woman named Ryla, spoke up, her voice laced with skepticism. You barely understand our systems. How can you claim to fix them? Marcus smirked, tossing the rag over his shoulder. Because I've spent my whole life fixing things I didn't understand at first. Machines are just puzzles. You find the edges, piece things together, and fill in the gaps. Ryla opened her mouth to retort, but Thalva raised a hand, silencing her. Enough, Ryla. He has proven himself more capable than any of us expected. Marcus didn't miss the faint flicker of amusement in her tone, though her expression remained stern. So, he said, clapping his hands together, what else is busted? Thalva hesitated, glancing at her crew before nodding. Follow me. She led him through a maze of corridors, the walls lined with faintly glowing panels that pulsed like veins. The ship was a marvel of alien engineering, but here and there, Marcus spotted signs of the crash. Fractured supports, damaged conduits, and scorch marks from what looked like small explosions. This, Thalva said, stopping in front of a heavily damaged section of the hull, is the most critical area. Our primary stabilizer controls are located here. Without them, we can't achieve proper atmospheric flight. Marcus whistled low, stepping closer to inspect the damage. Looks like the whole assembly's fried. Got spares? Thalva shook her head. They were destroyed in the crash. And even if we did, we lack the tools to install them properly. Marcus frowned, running a hand over the jagged edges of the stabilizer unit. I might be able to fabricate something. It won't be pretty, but it'll get you airborne. Ryla, who had followed them, snorted. And how do you plan to do that? With your primitive tools and scrap metal. Marcus shot her a wry grin. Exactly. He spent the next several hours working on the stabilizer assembly, using a combination of salvaged parts from the ship and his own tools. The alien crew watched in varying degrees of fascination and skepticism as he explained his process in plain, straightforward terms. See this, he said, holding up a fragment of scorched circuitry. This is the culprit. Your stabilizer relay overheated and blew the whole system. If we bypass it with this, he held up a copper wire, we can trick the system into thinking it's still there. Ryla crossed her arms. That's not how our technology works. Marcus grinned. Maybe not, but let's see if it listens to reason. As he worked, he couldn't help but notice Thalva watching him more closely than the others. While the rest of the crew seemed content to observe or complain, she seemed genuinely curious about his methods. You're different from the humans we've encountered before, she said at one point, her voice quiet. Marcus glanced up, raising an eyebrow. Oh, what were the others like? Most were either too afraid to approach us or too eager to exploit us. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, she seemed lost in thought. But you have no fear of the unknown. You embrace it. Marcus chuckled, returning his focus to the stabilizer. Fear's a waste of time. Besides, fixing things is what I do. Doesn't matter where you're from. When he finally finished, Marcus stepped back, admiring his handiwork. The stabilizer unit was patched together with a mix of alien alloys and Earth-grade materials, held in place by what looked suspiciously like duct tape. It's not going to win any beauty contests, he said, but it should work. Thalva stepped forward, inspecting the assembly. You're certain this will hold? Marcus grinned. As certain as I can be with alien tech and a toolbox I bought on sale. Thalva's lips twitched, the closest he'd seen to a smile. Then we'll test it. When the ship systems powered on and the stabilizer unit hummed to life, the crew's stunned silence was quickly replaced by murmurs of amazement. Ryla muttered something under her breath, begrudgingly impressed. Not bad for a primitive, huh? Marcus said, winking at her. Thalva turned to him, her expression unreadable. You continue to surprise me, Marcus. Perhaps we underestimated your species. Marcus chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. I get that a lot, but as he looked around at the grateful, If still somewhat wary, alien crew, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. With the stabilizer online and the engine humming steadily, the ship was no longer on the brink of total failure. But Marcus's work was far from over. As Captain Thalva guided him to other critical systems that needed repair, the alien crew started interacting with him more directly. What began as quiet observation quickly turned into an exchange of cultures and frequent misunderstandings. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor of the ship's control room, calibrating what appeared to be a communication console. His toolbox was open beside him, and various wires and circuit boards were spread out in a chaotic arrangement that seemed to baffle the crew. "You're making it more complicated than it needs to be," Ryla said, hovering nearby with her arms crossed. Marcus smirked without looking up. "Simplicity's boring. Besides, this is how we humans do things, trial and error. It's in our DNA." The younger alien rolled her eyes. "No wonder your species is still stuck on one planet." He grinned. "And yet, here I am fixing your ship. Funny how that works." Huh. Nearby, Thalva was seated at the command station, reviewing star charts that had been damaged in the crash. She glanced at Marcus with a faint smile. "Your confidence is admirable, but Ryla does have a point. Your methods are unconventional. They're effective," Marcus shot back. "Doesn't matter how fancy your tech is. A problem's a problem, and problems have solutions. You just need the right mindset." Thalva tilted her head. "Is this a common philosophy among humans?" "Pretty much," Marcus said, tightening a bolt. "We've got a saying. If it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid." Ryla groaned audibly, while another crew member, a red-skinned alien named Kaylees, laughed for the first time. "That explains a lot," Kaylees said, his voice deep and resonant. Marcus grinned. "Damn right it does." The crew's curiosity. As the hours passed, the alien crew's initial skepticism gave way to genuine curiosity. They began asking questions not just about his repairs but about Earth, humanity, and Marcus himself. "Your people seem to rely heavily on improvisation," Thalva observed during a rare moment of rest. She stood beside Marcus near the ship's viewport, gazing out at the desert sands stretching endlessly into the horizon. "It's how we survive," Marcus replied. "We don't have your fancy tech or spaceships. Hell, most of us haven't even seen a real alien before. But we make do with what we've got." Thalva's expression softened. "And yet, you excel in ways we did not anticipate. Your resilience is admirable." Marcus chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "Coming from you, I'll take that as a compliment." Ryla interrupted their conversation, holding up a strange, glowing device. "What is this?" Marcus blinked. "That's my flashlight." "What does it do?" "It lights up? You've got interstellar travel, and you're impressed by a flashlight?" Ryla frowned, twisting the device in her hands. "The design is primitive, but efficient." "Strange," Thalva chuckled. "Humans seem to favor practicality over elegance." "That's us in a nutshell," Marcus admitted with a grin. A humorous misunderstanding. At one point, while Marcus worked on a navigation console, Kaylees approached holding a silver container. "You must be hungry," Kaylees said, offering it to him. Marcus, having skipped lunch hours ago, eagerly accepted. "Thanks. What is it?" "Try it," Kaylees encouraged, his tone unreadable. The contents of the container resembled a pudding-like substance, shimmering faintly under the ship's lights. Marcus hesitated but decided to trust his new companions. He scooped up a spoonful and took a bite. The taste hit him like a freight train, an overwhelming mix of sour, sweet, and something he could only describe as electric. His eyes watered, and he coughed violently, nearly dropping the container. "What the hell is this?" he gasped, his voice hoarse. Kaylees burst out laughing, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the ship. "It's a delicacy on my homeworld. I thought you'd appreciate the experience." Marcus glared at him, though the corners of his mouth twitched in amusement. "Next time, warn me. That stuff's got a kick." Thalva, who had been observing the interaction, shook her head, clearly suppressing a smile. "Perhaps we should prepare something less challenging for him." bonding and tensions. Despite the light-hearted moments, tensions occasionally flared. Ryla remained openly critical of Marcus's methods, her skepticism fueled by pride in her species' technological superiority. "You're just lucky," she snapped during one heated exchange. "If we had the proper tools, we wouldn't need your primitive fixes." Marcus didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he finished reconnecting a circuit and stood, wiping his hands on his pants. "Maybe," he said calmly, "but you don't have the tools. And luck's just what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Thalva intervened before the argument could escalate. "Enough, both of you. We're all working toward the same goal." Marcus nodded, meeting Ryla's glare with a faint smile. "For the record, I don't care if you don't like me. But if you've got a better idea, I'm all ears." Ryla said nothing, her expression sour but thoughtful. A growing connection. Later, as the crew rested and the ship hummed with newfound stability, Thalva approached Marcus again. "You've proven yourself in ways I didn't expect," she said softly. Marcus shrugged. "Just doing what I can." Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful. "Perhaps there's more to humanity than we ever considered. You're not just resourceful. You're relentless." He chuckled. "Call it stubbornness. We're good at that too." For a moment, they stood in companionable silence, the distance between their vastly different worlds shrinking just a little. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his presence here was leading to something far bigger than a few repairs. And judging by the way Thalva looked at him, she might have felt the same. Marcus leaned back against the ship's interior wall, feeling the satisfying hum of systems coming back to life after days of intensive repairs. The once broken alien vessel was inching closer to functionality, thanks to his earthborn ingenuity and a lot of elbow grease. "Not bad for a primitive, huh?" he teased Ryla, who was silently observing him from across the room. She scowled but didn't reply, which Marcus took as a small victory. Thalva, however, seemed impressed. She had been watching him more closely than ever, her guarded demeanor softening with each system he brought back online. Marcus had just started packing up his tools when a shrill, rhythmic beeping echoed through the ship's corridors. He turned toward the sound as Thalva strode toward the main console, her sharp gaze locking onto the glowing screen. "What's that?" Marcus asked, his gut already telling him it wasn't good. "A proximity alert," Thalva replied, her tone grave. "Something, or someone, is approaching." The rest of the crew filed into the control room, their faces tense. Kaylee stepped forward, peering over Thalva's shoulder. "Could it be a rescue ship?" he asked, though the doubt in his voice was clear. Thalva shook her head. "No, we didn't send out a general distress call, only a short-range beacon. Whoever this is, they shouldn't have found us so quickly." Marcus frowned, glancing at the monitor. The screen displayed a hazy image of the approaching vessel, sleek, angular, and ominously dark. It wasn't hard to tell it didn't belong to friendly neighbors. "Let me guess," Marcus said, his voice dry. "Not friends of yours?" "They're scavengers," Ryla muttered, her usual sarcasm replaced with unease. "Opportunistic predators. They target stranded ships like ours, strip them of everything valuable, and leave no witnesses." Marcus felt his stomach twist. "Great. So what's the plan?" The intruders arrive. The scavenger ship descended rapidly, kicking up plumes of sand as it landed a few hundred meters from the alien vessel. Marcus and the crew watched from the viewport as a group of heavily armed figures emerged. Their armor was jagged and mismatched, their weapons glowing with an ominous blue hue. "They'll breach the hull in minutes if we don't stop them," Thalva said, her voice calm but resolute. Marcus glanced at her. "Do you have any weapons on board?" "A few," she admitted, "but our systems are still fragile. If they damage the stabilizers or the engine, we'll be stranded here permanently." Marcus's mind raced. They couldn't rely on brute force, not against a group of scavengers who likely had better weapons and more experience with combat. But if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was thinking outside the box. "All right," Marcus said, stepping forward. "We'll need to get creative." Thalva raised an eyebrow. "What do you suggest?" He grinned. "Let's set some traps." Setting the traps. Marcus worked quickly, directing the crew to gather materials from the ship's storage bays. They didn't have much in the way of traditional defenses, but with some improvisation, Marcus was confident they could make life difficult for the scavengers. "Okay," Marcus said, crouching by a bundle of wires and scraps. "We'll rig the airlock to vent a blinding flash when they try to breach it. That should buy us time to force them into the cargo bay." Kaylee's nodded, his large hands surprisingly deft as he followed Marcus's instructions. "And in the cargo bay?" Marcus smirked, holding up a canister of what looked like pressurized gas. "We make things explosive. If they want our ship, they'll regret it." As the crew worked, Marcus noticed Thalva watching him, her gaze unreadable. "You've done this before," she said quietly, standing beside him as he connected a series of wires to a makeshift trigger. "Not exactly," he admitted, "but I've had to deal with my share of stubborn problems. Sometimes you've got to think like your enemy and turn their strength into a weakness." Thalva nodded slowly. "Your adaptability is remarkable. I understand now why your species thrives despite its limitations." "Thanks, I think," Marcus said with a crooked grin. The battle begins. The scavengers breached the outer hull with a deafening blast, forcing their way into the ship's airlock. The crew tensed, their weapons raised, but Marcus motioned for them to hold their positions. "Wait for it," he whispered, his finger hovering over a small remote he'd rigged together. The moment the scavengers stepped into the airlock, Marcus pressed the button. A blinding flash of light erupted from the walls, followed by a deafening bang. The scavengers shouted in confusion, some dropping their weapons as they stumbled forward into the cargo bay. "Now!" Marcus yelled. The crew sprang into action, sealing the scavengers inside the cargo bay. Marcus's improvised explosives, rigged to detonate in a controlled burst, activated, sending a wave of heat and sound that disoriented the intruders further. Thalva and Kaylee's led the charge, using their energy weapons to subdue the remaining scavengers, while Marcus worked from the control room to lock down the ship systems. Within minutes, the scavengers were either incapacitated or retreating, dragging their injured comrades back to their ship. A narrow victory. As the scavenger vessel lifted off, trailing smoke from its damaged engines, Marcus leaned against the console, exhaling heavily. "Remind me to never make friends with those guys," he quipped. Thalva stepped forward, her usually composed demeanor giving way to a rare smile. "You saved us again, Marcus. Your ingenuity has proven invaluable." Ryla, still catching her breath, muttered something under her breath before adding, "All right. Maybe you're not entirely useless." "I'll take that as a compliment," Marcus said with a grin. Thalva's expression grew serious as she looked at him. "You've done more for us than we could have asked for. And I suspect your role in this journey isn't over yet." Marcus nodded, the adrenaline still coursing through him. "Something tells me you're right." As the crew began assessing the damage, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his encounter with these aliens was only the beginning of a much larger adventure. The ship hummed steadily as the scavenger ship disappeared into the distant horizon, leaving only a cloud of smoke and debris in its wake. Despite the tension, the alien crew seemed to relax for the first time in days. The repairs were holding, the traps had worked, and they had narrowly avoided being overrun by hostile invaders. Marcus wiped his brow and surveyed the control room. Kaylee's and Ryla were already at work securing the perimeter, checking for any damage. Thalva, however, was still standing near the viewport, staring out into the endless expanse of desert. "Good work, Marcus," she said without turning around. Her voice was soft, contemplative. He nodded, crossing the room to stand beside her. "We did what we had to. I'd say it's a miracle that everything held together." Thalva didn't smile, though the faintest edge of gratitude was in her tone. "You've done far more than that. Your skills are beyond anything we expected from your species." "I'm just good at thinking on my feet," Marcus said, trying to downplay his role. But the weight of her words settled on him, and he suddenly realized that there was more to this mission than simple repairs. He was becoming integral to their survival. "What's next?" he asked, trying to shift the conversation to something practical. Thalva hesitated before answering, her eyes still focused on the vast, barren landscape. We need to figure out where we are and how to proceed. Our navigational systems were damaged beyond repair, and though the ship's primary systems are functional, we're stranded without a way to contact our home. I can help with that, Marcus said confidently. If you can show me your star charts, I'll work on restoring the navigation system. Might take a while, but I can do it. Thalva finally turned toward him, meeting his gaze. We don't just need a navigation system. We need coordinates for our homeworld. Marcus paused. And you can't just use your own charts? Her expression was unreadable. Not exactly. The hidden truth. As they worked to restore the ship systems, Marcus began to notice more inconsistencies. The star charts Thalva had shown him didn't match up with anything in his own database of human space knowledge. There were gaps, strange coordinates, and even unfamiliar constellations. It was almost as if the crew was trying to hide something about their origin. Marcus wasn't one to pry into other people's secrets, but something about this felt off. The longer he worked on the ship systems, the more questions began to surface in his mind. Later that evening, as the crew gathered for a rare moment of rest in the common area, Marcus approached Thalva once again. This time, he decided to confront her directly. Look, he began. His voice casual but his eyes intent. I've been looking at those star charts, and something's not adding up. You've told me you're from a distant part of the galaxy, but I'm not sure I buy it. Thalva glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. What do you mean? Your charts don't match anything I've seen, Marcus said. Some of these stars don't even exist in any human catalog. And those coordinates, they don't seem to point anywhere at all. Thalva's eyes flickered briefly, but her mask of composure didn't crack. I don't know what you're referring to. Marcus leaned forward, his tone growing more serious. Come on, Thalva. I'm not stupid. You're not telling me everything, and I'm starting to think I should know. This isn't just about getting your ship fixed. You're hiding something, and I want to know what it is. For a long moment, Thalva said nothing, and the air between them thickened with tension. Then, almost imperceptibly, she sighed and stood up. Come with me, she said quietly. The hidden chamber. Thalva led Marcus through a series of corridors, each one growing darker and more sterile as they moved deeper into the ship. The atmosphere was heavy with an unspoken urgency, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to uncover something significant. They arrived at a door Marcus hadn't seen before, a hidden panel that blended seamlessly into the ship's metallic walls. Thalva entered a code, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a small, secure chamber. The air was cool and dry, and the walls were lined with unfamiliar devices and screens. At the center of the room stood a large console, its lights flickering erratically. This is our primary data hub, Thalva explained. It contains everything about our mission, our homeworld, and our species. But it's been damaged during the crash. And, as you've already guessed, it's not what it appears. Marcus walked toward the console, his curiosity piqued. What do you mean? What aren't you telling me? Thalva didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed her hand on the console's surface, and the screens lit up. A series of complex symbols flashed across the display, some of them familiar, but others completely alien to Marcus. Then, with a few quick gestures, Thalva unlocked a deeper layer of data. Here, she said, tapping on a particular symbol. This is our true origin. The screen shifted, displaying a map of a star system. At first glance, it appeared unremarkable, just another cluster of stars in the vast expanse of space. But as Marcus looked closer, he saw something that made his stomach churn. A string of planets, all marked with a symbol he recognized. A symbol for human research colonies. His eyes widened. Wait, are you saying? Thalva nodded, her expression grim. We're not from a distant galaxy. We're not from another star system. We're part of a long-term human experiment. One that's been kept hidden from the rest of your species. Marcus took a step back, feeling his world tilt. You're human? Thalva's eyes softened, but her voice was tinged with regret. We were, but that was a long time ago. We were engineered, created to be the perfect explorers, the perfect soldiers. We were part of a program that disappeared into the shadows. And now, we've forgotten our true purpose. Marcus felt the weight of her words crash down on him. You're saying you're not even real humans anymore? Thalva's voice cracked slightly. Not in the way you think. We've been altered, changed by forces beyond our control. But we remember who we once were, and we remember the earth we came from. Marcus stood in stunned silence. This was far more than a simple repair job. This was a revelation that would alter everything he knew about humanity's place in the universe. And somehow he had become part of it. The weight of Thalva's revelation hung heavily in the air, suffocating the space between them. Marcus stood frozen, his mind reeling with the implications of her words. He'd fixed their ship, fought off hostile scavengers. But now he realized he was entangled in something far larger and more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. You were part of some human experiment? Marcus asked slowly, his voice hoarse. And now you're stranded on some desert world? Thalva nodded, her expression pained but resolute. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We were sent out, trained to be explorers, soldiers, ambassadors, whatever humanity needed. But something went wrong. Our mission became corrupted, our memories were altered, and we were cut off from Earth. We've wandered through the stars for centuries, lost and searching for a way home. And now, her voice trailed off, and for the first time, Marcus saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. Marcus's mind was still trying to catch up. You're saying you're like genetic experiments? Designed for some purpose? Yes, she said, her gaze dropping to the floor. We were engineered to be perfect. Stronger, faster, smarter, able to survive in environments where humans couldn't. But that doesn't change the fact that we were once human, and the memories we hold are all we have left. Marcus shook his head, disbelief creeping into his voice. This is insane. I mean, no offense, but you look like me. You look human. That's the point, she said softly. We look human, but we're not. At least not anymore. Marcus's eyes wandered around the room, taking in the unfamiliar devices that flickered on the walls, the odd symbols that covered the screens. So why didn't you tell me this earlier? Thalva met his gaze with a mixture of sadness and regret. We weren't sure if you could be trusted. We weren't even sure we could trust ourselves. Our mission was always shrouded in secrecy, and over time we began to lose our sense of who we were. Our memories have been tampered with. Some of us don't even know what's real anymore. Marcus swallowed hard. He couldn't wrap his mind around everything she just shared. Was this really happening? Had he been dragged into a covert operation from Earth, one that had somehow spiraled out of control? Was he just a pawn in a game he didn't understand? Why come to me? Marcus asked, his voice sharp. Why involve me in all this? You don't even know me. Thalva stood up straighter, her expression hardening with resolve. Because we need your help. You fixed our ship, and now you have information, access to Earth's technology and knowledge that could help us piece together what happened. We need someone who understands human ingenuity. Someone who still has the potential to fix what's broken. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. So you want me to fix everything? Fix your memories. Fix your mission. Fix your entire messed up existence. We don't expect you to do everything for us, Thalva said, her voice quiet but determined. But you can help us find the truth. Maybe help us find a way back home. Marcus took a deep breath. The weight of her words settled into him like a stone in his stomach. He had already known that his life was no longer simple. He wasn't just fixing a ship now. He was fixing something far bigger, something that could change the course of human history, or destroy it altogether. I'll help, he said finally, though the words tasted bitter on his tongue. But I need answers. I need to know what's really going on here. No more secrets. Thalva nodded. Agreed. We'll show you everything. But understand this. The truth you're about to uncover might not be easy to accept. There are things we've learned in our journey, things humanity was never meant to know. And some of them, she hesitated. Some of them are dangerous. Marcus's thoughts spun. He wasn't sure what he'd expected when he first met Thalva and her crew, but it certainly wasn't this. He'd been so focused on getting back to Earth, so absorbed in the idea of helping these aliens get their ship repaired, that he hadn't considered the darker undercurrents beneath their situation. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice steely. "We start by finding out where we really are," Thalva said. "We need to locate the rest of our crew. There's a network of survivors, and they're the key to understanding what happened to us and how we can fix the damage." The hidden network. Over the following days, Marcus worked alongside Thalva and the rest of the crew to piece together more of the mystery. They dug deeper into the ship systems, recovering old data logs and fragmented records that told a story of a human experiment gone horribly awry. They discovered that the crew of the ship had been part of a secretive operation initiated by Earth's government long before Marcus's time. The project, codenamed Exodus, had been designed to create a new breed of explorers and soldiers capable of venturing into the farthest reaches of space. But something had gone wrong during the first test mission, and the crew had lost contact with Earth. What was supposed to be a one-way trip to the stars had become a decades-long odyssey of isolation and survival. Some of the crew had grown unstable, while others had started to question the motives of their creators. In the end, the project was abandoned, and the remaining survivors were left to wander, their memories wiped clean, their identities obscured. As they sifted through the data, Marcus found himself questioning everything he knew about his own species. What had Earth known about this project? How deep had the secrets gone? And was he simply a pawn in a game that had already been set in motion long before he had even come into the picture? One evening, as Marcus sat alone in the ship's control room, reviewing the last of the encrypted files, a soft beep from his console interrupted his thoughts. He glanced down at the screen, and his breath caught. The coordinates were familiar. They were the coordinates of Earth. Someone had found them. Someone was waiting. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Marcus sat frozen in front of the console, staring at the coordinates that had appeared on the screen. They were unmistakable: Earth's position in the galaxy, the planet he thought he'd left behind forever. The coordinates were clear, precise, and they didn't look like a random glitch. They had been sent with purpose. His heart hammered in his chest. Someone knew they were alive. Someone was waiting for them. But who? "Thalva!" Marcus shouted, his voice tight with urgency. The door to the control room slid open, and Thalva stepped in, her usual calm demeanor now tinged with concern at the sight of his pale face. "What's wrong?" He gestured to the screen. "Look at this." Thalva's eyes narrowed as she approached, her gaze following the coordinates displayed before her. Her expression shifted, ever so slightly, but Marcus could see it: fear. This is Earth's location," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned forward, his voice barely contained. "Whoever sent this signal, they know exactly where we are. And they know we've been searching for a way back. They're waiting for us." Thalva's lips pressed into a thin line, her mind clearly racing. This isn't a coincidence. The signal wasn't an accident. So what does it mean? Who would be tracking us? Marcus asked. His mind was whirling with the possibilities. Government agencies? A military faction? A hidden network of humans he didn't even know existed? "We need to find out," Thalva said, her voice calm but filled with a sense of urgency. "If someone's been watching us, it's likely they know things we don't. Things that could change everything. The decision to act." Marcus knew this wasn't just another random transmission. The fact that they had been targeted, followed, and now had coordinates for Earth, it all pointed to something far larger than he could have anticipated. The secret project, the manipulation of the crew's memories, the hidden truths about their origins. They were just the beginning of a much darker mystery. As Thalva turned to address the rest of the crew, Marcus felt a knot form in his stomach. There was something else here, something he hadn't quite considered yet. The crew had been part of an experiment. But if the people who had conducted that experiment were still out there, what would they want now? "Listen," he said, cutting into the conversation as everyone gathered around. "We need to make a choice. We're not just fixing ships and searching for answers anymore. Whoever sent this signal, they know about us, and they might be the key to everything we've been trying to understand. We need to decide if we go after them or if we shut it down and go our separate ways. Thalva's gaze sharpened. You think we should run? Marcus shook his head. No, not run. I think we need to know what we're dealing with. If these people have answers about who we are and why we were made, we need to find them. But we don't know what they want, Ryla interjected, her voice sharp with suspicion. For all we know, they might want to finish what they started. Marcus met her eyes, a hard edge in his voice. That's a risk we'll have to take. We've already been living in the dark for far too long. What if they can help us understand what happened? What if they have a way to fix what's been broken? Thalva, her expression unreadable, turned to the rest of the crew. It's a dangerous gamble, but it's our only option. We've been wandering the stars with no purpose. If we go back, we might find answers. We might find closure. Kaylee's, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. And what if these people have been watching us for centuries? What if they've known everything all along? No matter what happens, Thalva said, her voice firm, we need to face it. We can't stay here forever. The journey to Earth. The decision was made. The crew, though hesitant and fearful of the unknown, had resolved to follow the signal. They were heading back to Earth, or at least to where they believed Earth to be. The alien ship, now fully operational thanks to Marcus's work, was ready to embark on its final journey. Marcus felt a strange sense of finality as he watched the stars outside the viewport. His life had been turned upside down since meeting Thalva and her crew, and now he was about to embark on a journey that could change everything. He was no longer just an engineer fixing ships. He was part of something far larger, something that reached back into humanity's shadowy past. Thalva entered the control room as Marcus prepared the ship for launch. She stood quietly beside him, her hands resting on the console. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Do you think we'll ever find peace? Thalva asked softly, her voice almost lost in the hum of the ship's engines. Marcus glanced at her, unsure of how to respond. I don't know, but maybe we'll finally understand what happened. Maybe the answers are out there. She nodded, her gaze distant. I hope so. For all our sakes. The crew gathered in the main chamber, standing silent as the ship's engines roared to life. The craft rose slowly off the planet's surface, the desert beneath them shrinking as they ascended into the stars. Earth was still a distant dream, an unreachable goal, but the journey had begun. As the ship flew deeper into space, Marcus's thoughts turned to the future. The truth awaited them, but it wasn't going to be an easy path. Whoever was waiting for them, whoever had sent that signal, had their own reasons for doing so. And Marcus knew that the secrets they uncovered might be more than they could handle. But there was no turning back now. They were committed. The stars stretched out before them, endless and untouchable. But for the first time since he'd boarded their ship, Marcus felt like they were heading toward something. Something that could either break them or redeem them. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Their journey had only just begun. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stellar HFY content. Ring that bell to stay updated, and we'll see you next time.